Australia.
Scott Morrison says some aged care providers have been overzealous in imposing social restrictions on residents. Well, the PM hits back at suggestions Australian health data will be held overseas. Disturbing details revealed as a Porsche driver faces court charged with fleeing the crash that killed 4 police officers. And Australians prepare to mark a very different Anzac Day at home. Hello, I'm Yvonne Yong with ABC News. Now, aged care homes have been given an ultimatum to relax strict rules against family visitors or be forced to. Several homes have heavily locked down their residents for more than 3 weeks, prompting complaints from relatives. The Prime Minister says it's time those facilities open up when it's safe to do so. If they don't, they can be ordered to and punished with fines.
Having people stuck in their rooms, not being able to be visited by their loved ones and carers and other support people, that's not okay. But we are not going to have these as secret places where people can't access them. They must.
All visits to aged care homes will still be covered by medical safety guidelines backed by the Health Department. Health authorities are investigating a coronavirus outbreak at a Melbourne psychiatric facility after 14 people tested positive there. The Albert Road Clinic in South Melbourne is the source of a cluster that's left 3 patients in hospital, including 1 in intensive care. The inpatient facility has been placed into lockdown and dozens of patients, staff and visitors are in isolation as a precaution. The first case was recorded at the end of last month and 30 patients are still at the facility.
But the patients are all currently being isolated. They're all in their rooms and staff are managing them under the right infection prevention and control precautions. And we're treating everybody as a suspect case just to make sure that...
I don't think you could do more significant measures than we've taken at the moment. So to effectively shut down that facility, to be testing everyone and then to monitor everyone who's been a close contact.
Victoria recorded 6 new cases overnight. That includes 3 people from the Albert Road Clinic. There are fresh concerns over the government's virus tracing app after US tech giant Amazon was awarded with the contract to store users' data. Industry insiders say it could pose a security risk. Investigative reporter Dylan Welch.
As he tries to bring Australia back from its isolation, the Prime Minister had to reassure the public about a key plank of his exit strategy.
It's a nationally encrypted data store. It is illegal. It will be illegal for information to go out of that data store to any other person other than that for whom the whole thing is designed.
ABC News revealed today that global tech giant Amazon was awarded the data storage contract for the tracing app in a secretive tender process which critics say prevented local companies bidding for the service.
As I understand it, the overwhelming voice of experts in the digital space is that the data should remain in Australia and that there are Australian tech companies capable of providing that service domestically in Australia.
The app was announced by the Prime Minister this month as a means to speed up contact tracing around Australia.
The server's in Australia and it's using AWS, who work with Australia on many sensitive issues in terms of Australia's data management.
Concerns have also been raised about a decision to store the encryption keys for the tracing app with the data itself, a practice frowned upon in the industry.
You can lock a shed with a padlock, but if you keep the key in the padlock, the shed isn't really locked. Keeping the keys with the data is a similar analogy or a similar situation.
The government says their key management plan is standard practice and was cleared by the Australian Signals Directorate. A spokesperson for Amazon told ABC News that their customers retained ownership and control of data stored with Amazon's cloud services.
Download it yourself?
Sorry, of course I am. Absolutely I am. Are you?
Why not?
Great. Good on you, Michelle.
Now the Prime Minister just needs another 4 million Australians to do the same. Dylan Welch, ABC News.
Parts of the hospitality industry are mobilising to feed the many foreign workers who have no income after being stood down. Some restaurants have up to 70% of their staff on working visas. They're critical to the businesses but not eligible for any federal handouts. Zoe Daniel has this report.
It's a soup kitchen with a difference. The neediest stood down international hospitality workers, now being fed by their industry.
They were invited here, they were allowed here, they were welcomed here, and now when things got a little bit tough, it feels like we're turning, our backs on them.
There's certain people that definitely need taken care of first, but it doesn't mean that you should leave anyone in the dark, and that's how I kind of feel.
The Soup Project is a collaboration with food critic Danny Valent, who is also out of work, but has become an informal activist for international workers after starting a petition on their behalf.
This is my 4th week of work.
Colleen from France is one of tens of thousands now out of work in Hobart.
I just have to wait and hoping for the best.
Hurry up, Danny.
While still pushing for government help, the industry is offering its own practical support.
I don't know what I can achieve, but I know that they've felt grateful to have some of the information sorted out for them and to have someone who they can see cares.
To be honest, it can be hard to ask for help. It's not a nice position to be in. I'm really thankful.
Another looming problem for international workers is that when restaurants eventually do reopen, they're likely to be the last staff put back on because their salaries won't be subsidised under the JobKeeper program. A warm meal, though, remains a symbol of hospitality. Zoe Daniel, ABC News, Melbourne.
It was a beautiful, warm autumn afternoon in many parts of New South Wales today. Seems a lot of people had the same idea, to head to the beach. But as the numbers on the sand grew, physical distancing became a challenge. Some beaches had to be shut because people refused to follow the rules.
A warm autumn day brought hundreds to the beach. And as temperatures grew, so did the numbers. Only those exercising were allowed into the water, and while many were doing the right thing, not everyone was sticking to the rules.
The New South Wales government regulation, we will have to close the beach if you guys continue to congregate.
But the crowds continued to swell, and the flags came down.
We are now closing the water for the rest of the afternoon.
The siren went off earlier, and when we found out it wasn't a shark, we were actually disappointed.
Unfortunately, social distancing laws weren't obeyed, and it ruins it for everybody.
Everything we try and do, we're told we're not allowed.
Unfortunately, a lot of people came down and didn't adhere to the rules. They didn't come down for exercise. They came down here to sit on the beach, sunbake, and just stand around, play in the sand, and stand in the water and have a chat, which is not the reasons why we reopened.
One swimmer deliberately ignored the closure. After a short dip, he was met by police at the water's edge and given a warning.
But someone's got to stand up to these people. They're taking our liberties. Who gave them the right?
I do get it in my heart a little bit. I would love to have the courage to do the same, I guess.
But others were left frustrated.
I'm not impressed because I think these have been put in place to keep us safe.
Well, I hope he gets fined, and I'm sure all the residents that who unfortunately can't use the beach today also hope he gets fined.
Some risked far more than a financial sanction. These 3 beaches will now only reopen across the weekend between 6 and 9 o'clock in the morning. That decision, the council says, will be reassessed on Monday. Liv Casbin, ABC News, Coogee.
The company behind an Australian-made ventilator says their product could change the game for patients of COVID-19 in developing nations. But as Stephanie Zillman explains, the real story is what can be achieved when universities, government and the private sector all collaborate.
Designed and manufactured in Queensland over the past month, the Ozvator is a pared-back ventilator that can be rapidly manufactured for a tenth of the price of more sophisticated models.
That we could turn around a concept into potentially a product within a month is almost unheard of.
The product doesn't yet have approval by the Therapeutic Goods Administration, but has the backing of QUT's Medical Research Lab and intensive care specialists at Prince Charles Hospital. While it's hoped the ventilator could be a cheaper option for developing nations needing more ICU equipment, it's the collaboration between the government, medical, university and private manufacturing sectors that's exciting to researchers.
I so hope this is the new normal,
The Queensland Minister for Manufacturing believes the project is proof more can be done to close holes in the medical supply chain, including personal protective equipment.
Queensland and Australia is exposed because of long supply chains that run to other parts of the world. And those supply chains, the links in those supply chains can be broken.
Made of all locally sourced parts, the company behind the product says it could be ready for deployment in 4 weeks.
We didn't want to get in the way of the supply chain of the already stressed medical industry. So we decided to go down the route of the industrial, or sourcing industrial components.
Clinicians say, putting aside any buzz about a locally manufactured product, the crucial test for any new ventilator is that the pressure doesn't damage the lungs in the process.
Ventilator is significant life support. It comes with its benefits, it comes with its risks.
ICU specialist Dr Kiran Shekhar has lent his expertise to the project in the hope the ventilator could be used abroad.
Looking beyond the pandemic, I think initiatives like this can actually make ICU care accessible to a large number of patients who currently don't have access to ICU.
Since the COVID-19 crisis started, the Commonwealth Government has almost doubled the number of ventilators available in Australia. Stephanie Zillman, ABC News.
And Melbourne courts heard distressing allegations of what happened in the moments after Wednesday's horrific crash that killed 4 police officers. The driver of the Porsche, which was stopped before the crash, is facing 9 charges, including failing to assist at the scene of an accident. Police told the court the body camera of one of the victims would show the accused man verbally abusing her while she was pinned under a truck. Karen Percy reports.
The court was told Richard Paul Pusey was affected by methamphetamines and cannabis when he was pulled over for allegedly driving his Porsche at 149 kilometres an hour. It set the scene for a catastrophic crash when a truck veered across the highway, killing 4 officers. Leading Senior Constable Lynette Taylor, Senior Constable Kevin King, Constable Glenn Humphris and Constable Josh Presney. At the time the truck hit, the court heard Mr Pusey was away from the group, urinating on the grass by the freeway. The case will rely on footage from Officer Lynette Taylor's body camera, which recorded Mr Pusey. "All I wanted to do was go home and eat my sushi and you f***ing f***ed my car," Mr Pusey is alleged to have said after the crash.
Based on the alleged reports that I have heard today, it's completely sickening and disgusting.
The court heard Mr Pusey also recorded video on his mobile phone of Officer Taylor as she lay pinned under the truck. When he handed himself into police yesterday, they allege he gave them the wrong mobile phone, a device that had been wiped of evidence after the factory settings were restored.
Well, I think this week 4 police heroes died and 1 coward lived.
The driver of the truck, Mohinder Singh Bajwa, remains in hospital and has yet to be questioned. Police have been overwhelmed by an outpouring of public support.
To know that the community have got our back, as well as us having the community's back, is so, we feel so supported for that, so thank you.
The partner of Constable Glenn Humphris spoke about his loss today.
Only way we're going to remember Glenn and the other 3 is to talk about all the good times.
The 4 officers will be honoured by a public memorial once COVID-19 restrictions are lifted. Karen Percy, ABC News, Melbourne.
It's Australia's most solemn day, and coronavirus has forced a major rethink on the way we mark Anzac Day. Tomorrow there'll be no marches, public services or parades, but Australians have quickly invented new rituals and ways to honour diggers past and present.
For more than 100 years, Anzac Day has been defined by public gatherings and a shared spirit.
The march begins. 43,000 men, an Anzac army 7 miles long.
But thanks to an unseen enemy, those who've always marched together will tomorrow have to stand alone.
This is not normal to what we normally do. You know, we're not going to be shoulder to shoulder.
Iraq War veteran Bill Wetburn has taken matters into his own hands, rallying the troops for a driveway dawn service.
I put out a call to arms, if you like, I put a letter drop in each of the letter boxes in our little court.
Bill's neighbour Jess is a soldier, and with her retired military working dog, she'll be up before the sun.
Shh.
We all have to adapt, I guess, during this time, and as long as we still stop and remember, I think that's the most important thing.
In the face of COVID-19, this Townsville florist went DIY, selling kits so people can make their own wreaths at home.
We've got a beautiful silk poppy there.
And they've been flying out the door.
So I've had to order twice and I'm actually getting some more expressed up.
The Australian War Memorial, the Defence Department and the ABC are asking people to share images on social media to help record an unusual moment in history. From here in Australia's biggest garrison city of Townsville, troops embarked to World War I. They trained for Vietnam and for Afghanistan. But tomorrow, for the first time in living memory, these streets will be empty on Anzac Day. Soldiers have phoned more than 200 war widows in the region, women who might feel lonely without the usual Anzac Day gatherings.
Hello.
They just kind of said thank you. Thank you for checking in with us.
They're also checking in on veterans. And it might make up for missing out on beers at the RSL, but it reminds those who serve that while they're isolated, they're not alone. Yvonne, ABC News, Townsville.
And we'll have special Anzac Day coverage on ABC TV and the News Channel live from 5 a.m. The National Commemorative Service begins at 5:30 in Canberra, with the dawn service shortly after 6 a.m. The first human trial of a vaccine in Europe has begun in the UK. The first 2 volunteers have had their jabs, with hundreds more to follow, but it'll be months before they know whether the vaccine works.
A little jab with a big promise. Australian researcher Edward O'Neill was one of the first volunteers to be injected with a vaccine that could change the world if it works.
It seems like the right thing to do to ensure that we can combat this disease and get over it a lot faster.
A process that normally takes years has taken just 3 months for researchers at Oxford University, who are part of a global race to find a vaccine. They were aided by Australian scientists at the CSIRO, who conducted early stage testing.
Personally, I'm very optimistic it's going to work. There's absolutely no suggestion we're going to start using this vaccine in a wider population before we've demonstrated that it actually works and stops getting people infected with coronavirus.
Half the participants will be given the real vaccine, the other half will get a substitute, but they won't know which group they're in. And none of them will be deliberately exposed to the potentially deadly virus, so scientists will have to wait for volunteers to catch it.
We could know whether the vaccine works in as little as a few months, but it could take 6 months or more, and it so much depends on what happens with transmission of the virus here in the UK.
It can't come soon enough for frontline workers who've again won the gratitude of millions, or for the vulnerable, especially in care homes, which according to the World Health Organization could account for half the deaths in Europe. A vaccine remains the best way to get us all out of this situation and out of our houses. Here in the UK, the warnings are becoming increasingly grim about how long social distancing measures could be kept in place.
Possibly for the rest of this year, and maybe even beyond. And that's why talk of lifting the lockdown as if it's a flick of a switch moment is misguided.
And so it's up to science to try to find a solution. The work of these researchers has never been more important. Nick Dole, ABC News, London.
Unemployment surging in the US, reaching levels not seen since the Great Depression. More than 26 million people have lost their jobs since mid-last month. The US Congress has passed $800 billion in financial aid to help small business, fund hospitals and expand virus testing. Well, President Donald Trump speculated that injecting disinfectant could cure COVID-19.
And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside?
Homeland Security official later said it was not being considered as a treatment. The nationwide lockdown in India has helped slow the spread of coronavirus, but it's also had another unintended consequence. Pollution has dropped to levels not seen in decades. Cars have been forced off the roads and almost all industries have stopped operations. South Asia correspondent James Oaten reports from Delhi.
It's an unusually clean and quiet afternoon on Delhi's Yamuna River.
I've been living here for 36 years. I've never seen the Yamuna this clean.
With polluting factories shut down, photojournalist Abhinav Saha is taking advantage of the soft sunset light. His previous images of this place captured horrific industrial pollution, in stark contrast to today.
You can get a very beautiful picture. You can see blue sky, white clouds, greenery. It's historic, and you don't know when you will get this opportunity ever again.
During the cooler months, Delhi's air can be so polluted you can only see a few hundred metres. But under the lockdown, the country has been transformed, and it's not just the daytime people are enjoying.
I remember my childhood, my father standing with us and it's showing us the planets and the galaxy. We've never done it to our children because we could never see.
Everything is so clear. The clouds are coming daily.
Photographer Anshul Chopra lives in Punjab at the footsteps of the Himalayas. For the first time in his life, he saw the mountain range from his rooftop. He took a photo. It went viral.
I was standing on my terrace. I can see all the people standing at their terraces, looking at the same point and staring at the mountains like they were a dream. But, people say dreams come true.
The closing of industry was never going to be a long-term option, and plans are already being implemented to help kickstart an ailing economy, meaning the window to enjoy a clean and green Delhi is closing. James Oaten, ABC News, Delhi.
The National Rugby League says it will restart on May the 28th after reaching a deal with its two broadcast partners. A deal between the NRL, Nine and Foxtel is seen as crucial before the NRL moves ahead with the rest of its plans to restart the competition. Chairman of the Rugby League Commission, Peter Vlanders, says the structure of the competition will be announced after consultation with the players.
The meeting went into very good spirit. Both broadcasters were very cooperative. They appreciate the position that we're in, and hopefully early next week we'll make an announcement on the entire competition structure. Naturally, we have to consult our players plus our clubs.
Vlanders says the competition could be pushed further back if there's an upswing in coronavirus cases. State of Origin will go ahead but will be played after the grand final. Well, Rugby Australia's interim boss, Paul McLean, says the now-departed CEO, Raylene Castle, was the victim of abhorrent bullying during her time in charge of the game. Catherine Murphy reports.
It hasn't been a great week to be CEO of a rugby code in Australia. Raylene Castle joining Todd Greenberg on the COVID-19 casualty list.
In a normal circumstance, without the things that have happened in the last 2 years and some of the unwarranted criticisms and, in fact, bullying, I think it might have been a different scenario.
Castle's time at the helm included the Israel Folau saga and the failure to secure a broadcast rights deal.
There were times where she's been criticised for things which weren't of her making, and the board need to take some responsibility for that.
10 former Wallabies penned a letter demanding a change in leadership.
This is a major and urgent matter. Rugby in Australia is deteriorating at a rapid rate and no one's happy about that. So we need to do something really major to turn things around.
Going downhill fast, Super Rugby, producing low TV ratings and attendances. Once the pinnacle of the global game, some believe the competition's eagerness to expand in Australia and into Japan and Argentina has caused interest to shrink.
The expansion of Super Rugby into a broader competition where Australia went from having 3 teams to having 5 teams has been an absolute failure.
The format of it is a bit confusing. I think there are probably too many teams in it.
Travel restrictions could result in a domestic or trans-Tasman competition instead. Then there's the matter of the new Wallabies coach, Dave Rennie.
I know that he has a desperate desire to coach the Wallabies.
Just who Rennie will answer to is a work in progress. Catherine Murphy, ABC News.
Well, with sport here cancelled, a group of bored Australian fans have started supporting a football team in the small Eastern European country Belarus. Just weeks later, they've become a key component in helping the battling club survive. Their Facebook supporter group for FK Slutsk has drawn in fans from across the globe, while the club has embraced them and is now in daily contact to try to build on their newfound popularity.
Australian sport fans have had to scour the globe to get their fix. One group of Aussies turned to the Belarus Premier League and they've made quite an impact.
We sort of stumbled on it. Slutsk was the first game on. With the name, it created a bit of laughter, so we went, oh yeah, you know, that'll do.
They knew nothing about Belarus, west of Russia, or the tiny town of Slutsk, but started a supporter group for the team. It was a big success.
I'm watching from Farnborough in England.
New Jersey, USA.
Amsterdam, the Netherlands.
Go Slutsk.
Abza Slutsk.
Viva Slutsk!
We love our Slutsk.
A fan from the group created a team song. It's been adopted by fans in Slutsk and is now played at matches. The support turned more serious when the club, traditionally sponsored by the local sugar mill, reached out about its dire financial position.
The chairman of the sugar plant was put in prison, and after that the new management refused to give money.
The group raised $3,000 in a week and a half.
Australia, Sydney.
But more importantly, the exposure it's given has attracted new sponsors.
With this new wave of popularity, of course, we have a hope now.
The perennial strugglers are now top of the ladder, their success helping fans worldwide.
Basically keeping people sane through a really tough period.
In the time of social distancing, football has united fans 14,000 kilometres away. Peter Lusted, ABC News.
We've got a cool change moving through parts of southern Australia as we move through Saturday. It'll actually extend from the southwest corner of Western Australia up towards South Australia and Tasmania. For Victoria, though, the rain really will hold off until the afternoon. That'll be mostly about the west, and then it'll gradually start to spread further east in the evening. But we will see that rain developing in Adelaide by the evening. Should also remain dry in Hobart, but much of the remainder of Tasmania will see that rain develop during the day. A ridge of high pressure will continue to extend across the nation, keeping most areas relatively clear and dry. It really is just those southern capitals and areas in between likely to see some rain developing through the day.
That's the latest from ABC News. I'm Yvonne Yong. Do stay with us for Q&A.